probability of us getting someone who can face the time for the crime they've committed becomes a bigger reality. If the process and procedure are tedious, even with the small laws we have, people are not going to stay the whole process in order to get justice. So it will really be working with the Ministry of Justice at federal and state levels to ensure that when people complain, you have officers in place who are trained and can support the victims and complainants throughout the process and ensure the process is fair, because we don't also want a case where you bring a case to court and then because the prosecution and the law enforcement has not done their work and has not collected the necessary evidence, the case is lost based on just the fact that there's no evidence properly preserved and presented. So that's the way I would recommend for now, while still calling on Nigeria to ratify the necessary instruments we need to strengthen our protection in the workplace. So for example, like ILO Convention on Sexual Harassment, 190, is also an opportunity for us to look at strengthening this area, particularly in the workplace.
Thank you very much. We have a question now from Aaron. In Nigeria, compromising cases of sexual gender-based violence has not been criminalized, and reporting such cases is not obligatory. Do you think our criminal law system is also a factor for the frequent sexual abuses in Nigeria?
I think the first part of the question is not completely accurate. SGBV is criminalized. If the VAP is not applicable in your particular part of the country, there's still existing criminal laws which says you cannot commit assault, you cannot commit rape, and sexual abuse is criminalized. So reporting is often the point where we have a challenge, but we do know that based on some of the statistics coming from those who handle these cases, that reporting has increased in the last few years. And we think it's because people are now more aware that these things exist in the law books. So the criminal law system is not, if I were to look at it in terms of the laws that exist, it's not a factor for the frequent sexual abuse. The frequent sexual abuse we have in Nigeria is because nobody is being punished for it. So it's leading to impunity. If someone knows all they need to do is go and beg the relative of their victim and they get away with it, then you're not going to get justice. If people feel that they can threaten the victim because the person involved is a big man or a big woman or an influential or rich person, we're not going to get justice. So the law is there, we need to use it. So what is missing is that we're not prosecuting enough offenders to get them actually in jail and serving time for the crimes they commit. But that will soon be changing, because one of the innovative things that came out from the VAP Act, for example, is a sexual offenders register. It's based in Abuja and is going to be managed by the National Agency for Trafficking Against Persons. And this register would contain names of anyone who has been convicted on sexual and gender-based violence. What this means is that no matter where you've committed this crime in Nigeria, if you are a convicted sex offender, you're going to get on that register. And we're hoping that that will be a bigger deterrence. Even if you feel that you've escaped, that fact that a register has been established could be a big deterrence to discouraging repeat offenders and discouraging people from exploiting other people.
Thank you so much for your answer. I'm seeing some hands on, so I suggest we hear some voices if you agree.
Okay.
So we have Samuel. If you could, Samuel Salami, if you could open your microphone and you have 1 minute to ask your question, please. Thank you.
Samuel, you've been granted permission to talk. Please go ahead. Samuel, your mic is mute from your hand. Kindly unmute and proceed.
Okay, so I think maybe is it working?
Maybe we take someone else and then come back.
Yes, exactly. So Samuel, we will take your question later. So Precious Adigwe, please, can you open your microphone and you have 1 minute? Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so good afternoon. So I'm actually in the market. That's why my background is really noisy, but I will just be brief. Okay, so sometime last year we had a case with my NGO where a young girl was raped, and the parents she said she was raped, but when the officials came, they said they cannot attest to her testimony except the parents confirmed that she was raped. So in this sense, the offenders had gone behind the child and collected money. So the father was saying the child has not been raped, but the girl was saying she was raped. Then the official said the only person they can believe is the parents. So in this case, how then do we now recommend, or how then do we attest to the fact that the victims themselves attested that they were raped, but because of the fact that their testimonies are not acknowledged because she was a minor, she's not up to 18 years, she was about 13 years old. How can we now prove such cases in the court of law? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Precious, thank you so much for your question. This is a big predicament and it's a case that happens a lot in Nigeria. To be clear, in the first instance, children are human beings and children have human rights, and they also have a right to be heard. And when it comes to issues of crime, parents and anybody involved are not permitted to prevent the authorities from actually carrying out their activities. So the act of the police officers in this case who said, oh, they can't do anything because the parents are not giving consent when there's been an allegation of a crime is wrong. And that is why a few states like Lagos State has made it punishable that if as a law enforcement agent, you get news about alleged crime, especially sexual violence, you must investigate it to the letter. Failure to investigate it will lead to disciplinary action and possibly other criminal penalties. In the second instance, if the prosecutors decided that there's a case and they are pursuing it despite the parents' denial of the incident, they need to ensure that the girl sees a doctor and that they document the evidence and they also take a testimony. The challenge we have is that in Nigeria, that is very traditional. How they will secure the participation of the girl in any subsequent trial that would occur as a result of this investigation will be dependent on her parents. But parents can be, in the first instance, convinced and advocated to support, and as a last resort can be compelled to facilitate the participation of their child in proceedings where it will support the state in their case. But I can tell you, because there's already a bit of resistance on the part of the parents, the girl will probably not be getting the support she needs from home. So the chances of this case being a successful case is greatly diminished. And so our call would be to ensure that the girl gets medical attention that she needs. At least no parent will deny medical attention to their child. But in terms of going forward with the prosecution, it might be a very difficult case for the state to prosecute. And that is why it's important that we have facilities in our country that enables us to prevent violence. And when violence has occurred, to empower the state to take the lead to prosecute this. If the parents know that the girl was going to get justice and that the state will provide the transportation to take her to court and that the medical bills will be covered by the state, it will be less tedious for them. They wouldn't feel tempted, if, no matter how much money the person gives them, to drop the case for justice for their child.
Thank you very much. And based on your answer, I would like to take two written questions which are quite pertinent. The first one is, what is the place of evidence in the prosecution of sexual violence, especially when the crime happened years ago?
Yes, evidence is very key, because that's how you're going to, it's not so much what you say, but what you can prove that will stand in a court of law. But evidence is not only about physical evidence, it's also about the circumstances, things that could have occurred in order to, and then in an oral testimony. So it's a combination of so many things when you talk about evidence. For an incident that has happened many years ago, it would require a lot of corroboration with witness testimony, with incidents that could have been reported at that point in time, and also with applying what the circumstances were at that point in time. So there are a number of factors that are involved. And the challenge we've had in our law is because oftentimes people want to see physical evidence, but you can use a combination of evidence in order to corroborate the testimony of a victim of sexual violence. But of course, the best evidence is evidence that is contained at the moment and that is presented. And that is why we're really encouraging people to report, because your evidence is strongest at that time. But even years down the line, if you bring the facts and we're able to corroborate it, you can still get justice.
Thank you so much. And here's Augustine's question. What can be done when a victim refuses to provide details about a case of violation she reported?
Oh, when the victim refuses to cooperate, if I heard you correctly?
Yes, I think that's the context.
Is the question when the victim refuses to cooperate?
To provide details about a case of violation she reported, yes.
I think that we need, our prosecutors need to be a bit more savvy when it comes to these issues, because oftentimes people will complain and you will take evidence. So for example, you would have done medical checks, you would have gotten the details at the point in time when the person complained. So even if the person withdraws, you already have that initial testimony and you can go on with it, if indeed you want to prosecute the crime. And we have seen it happen in many cases where the victim came back and said, okay, I don't want to pursue the case anymore. But the prosecutor already has all the materials they need in order to proceed, they would, because we need to understand this. Sexual and gender-based violence is a health issue. It's a human rights issue. The state has an obligation to protect its people. And so an individual saying, oh, I don't want to be protected, does not hold water in terms of a state's international obligation to protect. And ultimately, the state also doesn't want to allow this situation to continue of impunity. And it also, in a way, removes the threat from the victim, because the victim could be threatened. We all know this happens. So if the victim says publicly, I don't want to get involved, and the state continues and secures a prosecution, can you imagine how powerful that would be? It means that the perpetrators know that even if they threaten the victim, even if the victim disappears, the state will continue. The state is steadfast and the state will prosecute and will get justice. I believe that would be it will make a strong difference in terms of how we campaign for justice for victims of sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria and all over the world.
Thank you very much. Since we have 10 minutes, I suggest we take 2 questions on voice and the last one is a written one. So I will start with Sobaloju Dorcas. If you would like to take the floor, and you have 1 minute to ask your question. Thank you.
Dorcas, kindly unmute your mic. Maybe we go on to someone else.
Yes, so, oh, okay, it's working.
Just of it are. Just of it are. Just of it are, sir.
Okay, let's move to the next one. Precious Adigwe.
Precious has spoken earlier. Can we go to Mbairi?
Oh, okay, yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to find out how easy is it to prove a case of rape in Nigeria? Because if it's not something that can be proven, on one end, it is going to be difficult for a girl to prove she was raped. On the other hand, it's also going to be very difficult for a guy, probably, or a girl who is accused of rape to defend herself or himself. So are these cases that can actually be proven? What exactly can someone do to prove a case of rape when we're dealing with two adults? How can we go to the extent of proving that this actually happened? What are the things you need to put in place to prove a case of rape?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question. I think that the first thing is when someone alleges rape, the person is saying, I did not give consent to this sexual activity. I think in cases of gang rape or in cases of rape by a stranger, many people might seem to want to believe that story. I think where we have the greatest challenge is when the rape occurs with someone the victim knows or someone with whom the victim has been formerly intimate with. And this is where the challenge lies, because it's not so much the fact that did this happen or not, but whether the people believe the victim. And that is why we want this issue of sexual consent to be explicit in terms of what it means. If a prosecutor and the judge listening to the evidence presented before them here ask the question, did you give consent? And the person says no. Then the court will have to review the issue as to whether consent was given, and if given, whether it was freely given. And if it's not given, then it's easy, right? So, of course, somebody could come out and realize that, oh my God, I'm going to go to jail for like 14 years or for life if convicted for rape. So I'm going to lie and say that she gave consent. And I'm going to give reasons why I think she gave consent. If the prosecutor and the court recognize that the fact that you've been previously intimate with someone does not mean that you've given consent for each activity that subsequently followed, then the issue of whether there's rape or not becomes much clearer. You see, so the challenge we're having is because there's all this coloration of language as to whether who is involved, who are the characters involved, how many people are involved, is it a stranger, is it somebody you know? So getting rid of all those colorations that are added on when a victim cries rape would help us secure better convictions. The second thing is, with this awareness, we do not want someone to experience rape. We want people to be able to escape this sort of experience because it has lifelong impact on victims' life. But we say, should you ever, for whatever reason, become a victim of this circumstance, as much as possible, please do not wash, do not change anything you're wearing. Go straight to report this. You can report, in the past people say you have to go to the police first before you go to the hospital and all of that. Go to whichever is closest to you. Many clinics now have what they call a rape kit, whereby they're able to take samples of someone's clothing, any evidence of any sort of discharges or any sort of bodily fluids on the person, able to take also a quick testimony which would then be prepared, and then when a prosecutor, when a law enforcement agent can be given to them. Because another challenge we have is that because the police are not talking with the hospitals are not talking with the lawyers are not talking with several of the other people the victim needs to meet. The victim gets tired of repeating their story over and over and over again. But healthcare is really important. So whether you go to the police station first or the hospital first, it's important to report and make sure you get a statement done. And if you hear of someone who has been raped, at that point in time, they'll be terrified. They'll have a lot of things on their mind. Give them that support and that encouragement that people will believe you. You need to report. So let's report first and secure that evidence first to strengthen to increase the potential of success in proving that claim. And it's also important to recall all the things that have happened. And we should remove all cultural barriers that says that a woman that is with a man late at night means that she's asking for it. It's wrong, it's not. If it's not an affirmative yes, then it's wrong and it's rape.
Thank you very much. So I'm taking 2 written questions actually, because it seems we have answered all the 12 questions. The first one is from Aaron, who actually had his hand on. As a gender desk officer in a law enforcement agency, how do I handle cases of sexual violence where my boss preferred to be nepotic?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. I would advise that as a gender desk officer, one thing that needs to make your job easy is the process complaint mechanism. The complaint mechanism should be such that when a complainant makes a complaint, it goes into the system so that it reduces the amount of interference other people might have on the process. The challenge we have is a lot of the things we do are paper-based and that they are not recorded and reported immediately. Because if you're able to show that you've received 10 cases of sexual violence in a particular agency and none has proceeded beyond the complaint stage, it will raise a red flag. And no boss wants to be seen to not doing his or her work. So ultimately, they will be forced, even if they are not convinced that this is the right track to go, to ensure that, okay, where are we on this case? Can you move ahead? That's one. Two, I'm sure within your organization, I don't know which one it is, there should be ways through which complainants can be advised to also escalate these issues. I've made a complaint, it hasn't happened, escalate it so that it can be opened up. We all need to do our bit without you being confrontational with your boss. We all need to do our bit to empower complainants to the various means through which they can report their issues so that if the boss doesn't want to work on it, the complaint reaching a higher body would force their hands to work on it.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to address quickly what Genevieve is raising. I recall that Osai actually replied to your question, but just to be transparent. So there is a real life scenario where someone was raped by a family friend, and because of her parents' relationship with the family of the culprit, her parents suppressed the case. Now she's grown up, scared to open up because of stigmatization and the fear of condemnation from family. But this lady still got flashbacks from those events, which messes her mental state up. Any help for her?
Yeah, that's a really sad case, because it's one thing to be violated, then it's another thing for your own family members not to believe you and to be part of the cover-up. So it can create all kinds of mental issues. I believe that she never got the support and the closure she needed. So my advice now would be for her to reach out. I don't know where she is, whether she's in Lagos or in Abuja. And of course, we're all in this lockdown state at the moment. But if she's in Lagos, I will advise her to book an appointment with the Mirabel Center. They're based in Ikeja. If you Google Mirabel Center, you can get it. You can get the address. Their office center is linked to the Lagos Teaching Hospital in Ikeja. where she can speak to a counselor, because the process of healing begins with talking and sharing her story, and also making peace with herself and her family members. The second thing is, if she wants to pursue the case, it will depend on whether this is something she feels will give her closure, or this is something that she's willing to go all the way. But she needs to be strong in order for her to pursue any sort of claim of against this person that perpetrated this. And it would be good for her to build a cycle of friends around her, because clearly her family will not support whatever steps she chooses to take. But it's important for her mental well-being to get that sorted. If she's in Abuja, there are other agencies we can recommend. There's a Dorothy Injemacy Foundation to offer counseling as well. And then there are a few other SACs, which has been established by with support of the EU and several other donors under the Spotlight Initiative, that she can approach. But it depends really on which state she's in. And I don't know whether there's a way through which you can confidentially request the information of the SACs and information of these various bodies by email. You can send an email to info@amnesty.org.ng. I'm sure UTOP Africa will also share whatever email address that you can then use to get access to these service providers. But she's not going out of her mind. What happened to her is real. She needs to call it out for what it is, and she's going to get her healing, and her life is going to be much, much better. But she needs to speak to a counselor in order to begin that process.
Thank you very much. We still have like 14 open questions. I'm happy that you want to interact with us. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up, but me personally, I left in the chat my contact, and then you can communicate with Youth Hub Africa and somehow transfer these questions. We want to keep it as an ongoing conversation. So please don't lock your curiosity. Just share the questions with Rotimi and the Youth Hub Africa team, and feel free to reach out to us as well. We will try to answer. I would like to thank you, Osai, for taking the time to join us and to share your expertise and to spend this hour with us. Please be safe and take care. And I would like to extend my greetings and best wishes to all the participants and attendees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely day too.
Have a lovely day. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye all.
Bye, everyone. And this is where we'll draw a close to today's conversation. Let me thank our facilitator, Sodfa Daaji of the African Legal Think Tank on Women's Rights, who's taken the time to facilitate this week, engage in the forum on the platform where we're doing the online course, and also lead today's conversation. And let me thank my good friend also, Osai, for taking time out of her busy schedule. She's been doing a lot of calls and talk this period. I saw one of our Instagram live a couple of days ago. Thank you so much. Sodfa is also doing exams this period, so I was really concerned. I wish we were not going to eat into exam time, but she said she's going to take her time to do this. Thanks, Sodfa, for taking time out of your law master's exam to have this conversation with us. Thanks from all the team at Youth of Africa. We love you and we appreciate your time, and we look forward to engaging with you later on. Bye, everyone. Thanks for taking time. Bye, all our attendees. And watch out for week 3 starting on Monday, and we're sure you're having a good time. Bye.
Bye. Bye.